I never thought loneliness could make a man blind. But it can. It did. I came to Pattaya for the beaches, not the bars. I told myself I'd just look, not touch. But when I met Belle, everything changed. She wasn't like the others. She listened. She laughed at my dry jokes. She held my hand like it meant something. Then last week, I got an email from someone who's been following this channel for a few months now. He said he found it by accident, one of those late-night rabbit holes on YouTube, and ended up staying because he saw himself in the stories. He wrote that he'd met a girl in Pattaya too, years ago, and that the way I described Belle brought back memories he'd buried under work, whiskey, and years of pretending he'd moved on. When I read his message, I just sat there staring at the screen. At first, I smiled, that quiet, bittersweet kind of smile that comes when someone truly gets it. But as I kept reading, my chest tightened. His words felt too familiar. The same hopes, the same mistakes, the same small moments that make you believe love might finally be safe again. That email reminded me why I started sharing these stories, because what happens here isn't just about men and women. It's about what happens when loneliness finds an open door. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to every single one of you watching from around the world. Whether you're new here or one of the many who keep coming back, your comments, likes, and messages keep this channel alive. Let me know where you're watching from. I read every one of them. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. I thought I'd found peace in her arms, a kind of love I'd never known, not even in my marriage. But what started as curiosity ended with me sitting alone in a cheap apartment, my bank account empty, my pride shattered, and my passport nearly gone. I used to judge men like me. Now I understand why they fall. The flight from Manchester to Bangkok felt like an escape more than a holiday. 12 years since the divorce. 12 years of living in that same flat with the same gray view of the railway yard where I'd worked for 33 years. My daughter Sarah barely called anymore. Last time we spoke, she said I was emotionally unavailable. Maybe she was right. After her mother left, I didn't know how to be anything else. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but what it really meant was that I'd become invisible even in my own home. Margaret said I was there but not present, that I'd stopped trying. Maybe I had. After decades of the same routine, fixing the same trains, coming home to the same silent dinners, I'd just stopped feeling anything at all. So when my mate Dave at the pub said he'd been to Thailand and it changed his life, I thought, why not? 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks to feel something other than the weight of routine pressing down on my chest every morning. Dave had shown me photos of beaches, temples, street food. He'd talked about how cheap everything was, how friendly the people were. He didn't mention the other stuff. Or maybe he did and I wasn't listening. Either way, I booked the ticket on a Tuesday night after 3 pints of bitter. By Wednesday morning, I was having second thoughts. By Friday, I was on a plane. I landed in Bangkok on a Tuesday afternoon. The heat hit me like opening an oven door. I'd never experienced humidity like that. Within minutes, my shirt was stuck to my back. I took a bus to Pattaya because Dave said it was where the beaches were. The journey took about 2 hours through traffic that made Manchester rush hour look orderly. When I finally arrived at my hotel, a modest place called the Palm Garden, I was exhausted. The room was small but clean, with a balcony overlooking the street. I stood there for a long time, looking out at the neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an afternoon rain. I could hear music, laughter, the constant hum of motorbikes. It was overwhelming. I was 63 years old and I felt completely out of place. That first night, I sat in my hotel room, watching BBC World News and eating instant noodles I'd bought from a 7-Eleven downstairs. I thought about just staying in the room for the whole trip. Order room service, watch TV, maybe venture out to the beach during the day, safe, predictable, lonely, but around 9 o'clock, something shifted. Maybe it was the sound of life happening outside my window. Maybe it was the realization that I'd flown 6,000 miles to sit in a box. Whatever it was, I changed my shirt, splashed water on my face, and headed out. The air was thick and warm, nothing like the damp cold I'd left behind. I walked down Beach Road, past hotels and restaurants with tourists sitting outside drinking beer. Nobody looked at me. I was just another middle-aged white man in a city full of them. I passed bars with girls standing outside, calling to tourists in broken English. "Hello, sexy man, come inside. I take care you." Their voices were cheerful but mechanical. I kept my head down, embarrassed. This wasn't why I came. At least that's what I told myself. I walked for about 20 minutes, until I reached Walking Street. It was chaos. Lights everywhere, music pounding from every doorway, people stumbling drunk and laughing. Girls in bikinis danced on poles in open-fronted bars. Men with beer bellies and Chang singlets leered and whistled. I felt disgusted. Not at them, but at myself for being here, for being lumped in with these people. I was about to turn back when I saw her. She was standing outside a small bar called the Blue Lagoon, not calling out to anyone, just looking at her phone. She had long, dark hair that fell past her shoulders, a soft face with delicate features, and she wore a simple black dress that was elegant compared to the barely there outfits of the other girls. When she looked up and caught my eye, she smiled. Not the mechanical smile I'd seen on the other girls, the one that didn't reach their eyes. This one was different. Genuine, somehow. "You look lost," she said, her voice gentle, almost concerned. I laughed nervously. "I am a bit. Yeah." She stepped closer. Not too close, not invading my space, but close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something floral and sweet. "You alone, mister?" I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. She tilted her head, studying me. "Me too. You want to sit? Just talk. No pressure." Something about the way she said it made me believe her. I followed her inside. The bar was small, maybe 10 tables, with a few other customers scattered around. The music wasn't as loud as the others on the street. We sat at a table near the back, away from the door. She ordered a cola. I had a beer, a local brand called Leo that I'd never heard of. "I'm Belle," she said, extending her hand across the table. I shook it. Her hand was small, soft. "Richard." She smiled again. "English?" I nodded. "Manchester." She nodded like she knew where that was, though I doubted it. "I have cousin in London," she said. "She work in restaurant." I didn't know if it was true, but I appreciated the effort to connect. We talked for an hour. She asked me about my life, my work, why I came to Thailand. I told her about the divorce, the loneliness, the need to see something different. I didn't tell her about the nights I'd sat alone in my flat, staring at the TV without watching it, wondering if this was all there was left. She listened. Really listened. Not like she was waiting for her turn to speak, but like she genuinely cared. When I asked about her, she said she worked in the bar but wanted to do something else. "It's hard here for people like me," she said quietly, looking down at her hands. I didn't know what she meant yet. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shook her head. "Maybe I tell you later. First time, I don't want to scare you away." We talked about lighter things after that. She asked about England, about the weather, about football. I told her I wasn't really into football, which seemed to surprise her. "All English men love football," she said with a laugh. "Not this one," I replied. "I prefer cricket." She had no idea what cricket was, and I tried to explain it, which made her laugh even more. Her laugh was lovely, light and genuine. It made me feel like I was interesting, like I had something worth sharing. Before I left that night, she touched my arm. "You come back tomorrow? I like talking to you." I felt something stir in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the ache of being wanted even for a moment. "Yeah," I said. "I'll come back." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about her voice, her smile, the way she made me feel like I mattered. I also felt guilty, like I was doing something wrong. What would Sarah think if she knew I was talking to a bar girl in Thailand? What would Margaret think? But then again, they'd made it clear they didn't think about me much at all. So why should I care what they thought? The next evening, I went back to the bar. She was there, sitting at the same table, wearing a different dress, this one dark blue. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come," she said when she saw me. "Why wouldn't I?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She shrugged. "Most men, they come once, then gone. They want something, get bored, find new girl." I felt a pang of sadness for her. Well, I'm not most men. She smiled. I can see that. We talked for hours that night. She told me about growing up in Isan, the poorest region of Thailand, about her family's rice farm, about going to school with no shoes, about her father who drank too much and her mother who worked herself to exhaustion, about moving to Pattaya when she was 18 because there was no future in the village. I want to send money home, she said. Help my family, but is hard. I asked about her life in Pattaya. She said she'd worked in different bars, different restaurants, that it was difficult for someone like her. What do you mean, someone like you? I asked again. She went quiet. The bar had emptied out. It was just us and the bartender, who was wiping down glasses and pretending not to listen. Belle looked at me, her expression serious. I need to tell you something, she said. My stomach tightened. Okay. She looked down at her hands, twisting a napkin. I am Ladyboy. You know what this means? I did. I'd heard the term. I'd seen the shows advertised. Pattaya was famous for them. But sitting there, looking at her, it didn't feel real. She was beautiful, feminine. There was nothing that suggested she was anything other than a woman. You mean you were born a man? My voice came out quieter than I intended. She nodded, not looking up. But I am woman now. I have surgery, take hormone, everything. In my heart, always woman. Still okay? I didn't know what to say. I wasn't expecting this. My mind raced. I thought about getting up, making an excuse, leaving. But when I looked at her, I didn't see deception. I saw vulnerability. I saw someone who'd just handed me the power to hurt her. Yeah, I said slowly. It's okay. She looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. You don't think bad of me? I shook my head. No, I think you're brave. She reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you, Ricky. Most men, they get angry. They say bad things. You are different. Nobody had called me Ricky since I was a child. My mother used to call me that. It made me feel young again, like I was someone who still had potential, still had a future worth living. That night changed everything. Belle opened up to me in ways I didn't expect. She told me about the rejection from her father when she was 15, when he found out she was different. About the beatings, the shame, the feeling of never belonging. She told me about the struggle to feel accepted, about the men who wanted her body but hated what she was. About saving money for years for her surgery, about the pain and recovery, about finally feeling like herself. I listened, and with every word, I felt a connection I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was because we were both outsiders in our own ways. I was the divorced man nobody wanted, the quiet one at the pub who drank alone. She was the woman the world refused to see. I told her I didn't judge her. I told her I understood what it meant to feel invisible. She squeezed my hand. You are good man, Ricky. Maybe too good for a place like this. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw Belle almost every day. My original plan to see temples and beaches fell away. I spent my mornings alone, wandering markets and eating street food, then my afternoons and evenings with her. She showed me a different side of Pattaya. We took a motorbike taxi to a Buddhist temple on a hill overlooking the city. She lit incense and prayed while I stood awkwardly to the side, not knowing what to do. You can pray too, she said. For what? I asked. She smiled. For whatever you need. I closed my eyes and thought about Sarah, about the years we'd lost, about maybe finding a way back to each other. I didn't know if it would work, but it felt good to hope. We went to markets where locals bought their vegetables and meat, places tourists never saw. She'd translate for me, laughing when I tried to pronounce Thai words and failed miserably. We went to a small restaurant where her friend worked, and they spoke rapidly in Thai while I sat smiling dumbly. She says you are handsome, Belle translated, and I blushed. She's lying, I said. Belle shook her head. No, you have kind face. That is more handsome than muscles or money. We went to the beach at dawn one morning. It was empty except for a few locals doing Tai Chi. We sat on the sand and watched the sun rise over the Gulf of Thailand. She rested her head on my shoulder and I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. You make me feel safe, Ricky, she whispered. I kissed the top of her head. You make me feel alive. I started paying for things without thinking. Her phone bill was due and she mentioned it casually. I offered to pay it. 300 baht. About £7, nothing. Her rent was late, and her landlord was threatening to kick her out. 2,000 baht. £50. I handed it over without hesitation. She cried and hugged me. I pay you back, she said. Don't worry about it, I replied. I want to help. And I did. It felt good to be needed, to be useful, to be someone's hero. Over the weeks, the amounts grew. Her mother was sick and needed medicine. 5,000 baht, her younger brother's school fees. 3,000 baht. Her motorbike broke down. 4,000 baht. I kept a mental tally at first, thinking she'd pay me back like she promised, but after a while, I stopped counting. What did it matter? I had savings. I had my pension. And she had nothing but me. After a month, I extended my stay. I called Sarah to tell her. Why? She asked, her voice suspicious. I'm enjoying it here, I said. It's warm, it's cheap, it's different. There was a long pause. Are you seeing someone? I hesitated. I've made a friend. Another pause. Dad, be careful. Those people. They're not always what they seem. I felt a flash of anger. What people? I asked. You know, she said. The bar girls, the scammers. I wanted to tell her that Belle was different, that she genuinely cared about me, that we had a connection. But I knew how it would sound. I'm fine, Sarah. I know what I'm doing. She sighed. Just don't do anything stupid. We hung up shortly after. I sat on my hotel balcony, staring at my phone, feeling defensive and ashamed at the same time. I rented a small apartment near Jomtien Beach, a quieter area south of central Pattaya. It was a studio with a kitchenette, a double bed, and a small balcony. 10,000 baht a month. About £250. Belle came to see it the day I moved in. Very nice, Ricky, she said, looking around. You happy here? I nodded. Happier than I was in Manchester. She walked onto the balcony and looked out at the street below. I am happy you stay. I came up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. Me too. She leaned back into me. Maybe I stay here sometime? If you want. My heart swelled. Of course I want that. She started staying over a few nights a week. We'd cook together, simple meals of rice and vegetables and whatever meat we could find at the market. We'd watch Thai dramas on the small TV, and she'd translate the funny parts, laughing at my confused expressions. She taught me basic Thai phrases. Sawasdi crap for hello, Kop kun crap for thank you, Chan rak kun for I love you. I practiced them until I could say them without stumbling. One night, lying in bed, she turned to me. I want to stop working at bar. I want normal life. I stroked her hair. What would you do instead? She was quiet for a moment. Maybe open salon. I'm good with hair, makeup. I studied before a long time ago. But need money to start. I kissed her forehead. How much? She shook her head. No, Ricky, I don't ask you for this. But I wanted to give it. I wanted to be the man who changed her life. The man who saved her from the bars and the judgment and the life she didn't want. Just tell me, I insisted. She hesitated, like she was calculating. Maybe 200,000 baht, but is too much. I save myself, maybe take few years. I did the math in my head. About £5,000. It was a lot, but I had savings. My pension was decent. I'll help you, I said. She sat up, her eyes wide. Really? I nodded. Really? She threw her arms around me, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. You make me feel safe, Ricky. I never feel this before. Never. I held her, feeling like I'd finally found my purpose. But things started to shift. Slowly at first, like the tide going out. Belle began spending less time with me. Busy with family, she'd say when I asked to see her. My mother's sick. Need to go home for few days. She'd be gone for 3 days, 4 days, a week. When she came back, she was tired, distracted. I asked if her mother was okay. Better now, she'd say, but still need medicine. I sent more money. Her brother had a motorbike accident and needed surgery. More money. Her cousin's wedding required a gift. More money. I didn't question it. I wanted to be the man who could fix everything, who could solve every problem with a transfer from the ATM. But doubts started creeping in like shadows at dusk. One evening, I tried to visit her apartment. She'd always said it was too messy, too small, too embarrassing for me to see. This time I insisted. I don't care what it looks like. I just want to see you. She got defensive immediately. Why you don't trust me? The question stung. I do trust you, I said. I just want to see where you live. She softened slightly but held firm. Ricky, my place is very bad. I am shame for you to see. I come to you tomorrow. Okay? I promise. I backed down. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to be controlling. She didn't come the next day. Or the day after. When I called, she didn't answer. When I texted, her replies were short and delayed. Tired. Busy. Talk later. I started noticing other things. She'd be online on Facebook late at night but wouldn't reply to my messages. When she finally did, hours later, she'd say she was sleeping. I could see her posting photos, selfies with friends, check-ins at restaurants I'd never been to. I told myself she was just living her life, that I couldn't expect her to be available all the time. But my gut told me something else. Something was wrong. Something had changed. I ignored it because I couldn't afford to lose her. She was the only thing that made me feel like my life had meaning. Then came the night I'll never forget. It was a Friday. I'd been trying to reach Belle all day. She'd told me she was going to visit her mother again, but her Facebook showed she was active in Pattaya. I felt a knot in my stomach. I decided to surprise her at the bar. I told myself it was innocent, that I just wanted to see her smile, maybe take her out for a late dinner. I walked to the Blue Lagoon around 10 o'clock. The street was packed, loud, chaotic as always. I walked in quietly, scanning the room, and there she was, sitting on another man's lap. He was younger than me, maybe in his 40s, with a thick German accent. She was whispering in his ear, laughing, her hand on his chest. My heart stopped. The world seemed to tilt. I stood there, frozen, as the music and voices swirled around me. She looked up and saw me. Her face went pale. She pushed herself off the man's lap and ran outside. I followed, my legs moving on autopilot, my mind screaming, "Ricky, wait!" she called after me. I stopped in the alley behind the bar, next to overflowing bins and puddles of dirty water. She was crying, mascara running down her face. "Is not what you think." I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it was closing. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "He's just friend," she said, her voice breaking. "I need job. You know I need money." I finally found my voice. "I thought you stopped working here." She grabbed my hands. "I try, Ricky. But salon need more money. I try to save. This man, he just buy drink. Nothing more. I do this for us." I wanted to yell. I wanted to grab her and shake her and demand the truth. I wanted to walk away and never look back. But instead, I just stood there, feeling my dignity crumble. "Do you care about me at all?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Of course I do. You are only man who is good to me, who see me as woman, not just body." She hugged me, trembling. "Please, Ricky, I will stop. For you, I promise. No more bar. I quit tomorrow." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. I wrapped my arms around her and held her while she cried. I forgave her that night. It was the biggest mistake of my life. A week later, Belle came to me with a new plan. We were sitting on my balcony, drinking iced coffee in the afternoon heat. "I find place for salon," she said, her voice excited. "Good location, near Walking Street. Many tourists, many Thai ladies. But I need 200,000 baht now, or someone else take it." I stared at her. "What happened to the money I gave you before?" She looked away. "I use for family emergency. My mother, she very sick. Need operation." I didn't remember her telling me about an operation, but maybe she had. and I'd forgotten. My memory wasn't what it used to be. What kind of operation? I asked. Her heart, Belle said quickly. Doctors say she need valve replacement. Very expensive. I felt a pang of guilt for questioning her. I don't have that much left in my savings, I said slowly. She took my hand. Please, Ricky. This is my dream. I pay you back. I swear on Buddha. When salon open, I make good money. I pay everything back. I looked into her eyes and saw desperation. Or maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. Hope. Love. A future. Okay, I said. I'll get the money. I went to the ATM that evening and withdrew 200,000 baht in increments. The machine only allowed 20,000 at a time, so I had to go to multiple ATMs at different banks. By the time I was done, I had a stack of bills that felt heavy in my hands. When I handed it to her back at the apartment, she cried. Real tears, or what looked like real tears. You trust me so much. I don't deserve you. I held her. You deserve everything. She stayed that night. We made love for the first time in weeks. Afterward, she lay with her head on my chest. I love you, Ricky, she whispered. It was the first time she'd said it. I love you too, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. She fell asleep in my arms. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling something close to happiness. 2 days later, she told me she had to go to Aizan to see her family. Just 1 week. Maybe less. Then I come back and we start salon together. I believed her. I watched her pack a small bag, kissed her goodbye, and told her I'd be waiting. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I should have known then. I should have seen it. But I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I chose not to. She took a bus from the station, early in the morning. I went with her, helped her with her bag, bought her snacks for the journey. You are too good to me, she said as the bus pulled away. I waved until I couldn't see her anymore, then walked back to my apartment feeling empty. She didn't come back in a week. I called her phone the day she was supposed to return. No answer. I sent messages. Nothing. After 5 days, she finally replied, Business slow. Family need more help. We'll pay you back soon. My chest tightened. When are you coming back? I typed. Hours passed. Then, not sure. Maybe 2 weeks. I called again. She didn't pick up. I sent another message. Belle, please just talk to me. I'm worried. Hours later, she replied. I'm fine. Don't worry. Talk soon. But we didn't talk soon. Days turned into weeks. She responded less and less. When she did, her messages were cold, distant. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, waiting for it to light up with her name. It rarely did. When it did, it was always bad news. More money needed. More delays. More excuses. I started losing weight. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was drowning. I replayed every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out where it went wrong. Had I done something? Said something? Was I not enough? Was I too old? Too boring? Too needy? My mind spiraled. I stopped leaving the apartment except to buy food. I stopped answering Sarah's calls. I just existed, waiting for Belle to come back. Then I met Tom. It was a random encounter at a cafe near the beach. I was sitting alone, drinking terrible coffee and staring at nothing. He sat at the next table, a British man in his 50s with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes. You all right, mate? He asked. I nodded automatically. Fine. He didn't believe me. You look like I did about 5 years ago, he said. Woman trouble? I looked at him, surprised. Something like that. He gestured to the empty chair at my table. Mind if I join you? I shrugged. He sat down and ordered a coffee. How long you been here? He asked. 3 months. I said. You? He smiled sadly. 5 years. Came for 2 weeks. Never left. We started talking. I told him about Belle, about the money, about the promises, about how she'd disappeared. He listened, nodding, not interrupting. When I finished, he sighed. Mate, I hate to say this, but you've been played. I shook my head. No, she's different. He leaned forward. They're all different until they're not. I've seen this 100 times. Hell, I lived it myself. I felt anger rising. You don't know her. He pulled out his phone. Maybe not. But I know Pattaya. He scrolled through his photos and stopped at one. He turned the phone to show me. It was Belle. She was sitting in a restaurant with a man I'd never seen. A white man, older, well-dressed. They were holding hands across the table. My stomach dropped. The room spun. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice shaking. He looked at me with pity. A friend sent it to me yesterday. Said he saw her with this bloke in the same condo building where you said you're paying her rent. I asked around. She's been seeing him for weeks. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the photo. My hands trembling. That can't be her. But it was. I knew it was. The same hair. The same dress. The same smile I'd thought was just for me. I confronted her that night over Facebook Messenger. I saw a photo of you with another man. In the condo I'm paying for. She read the message immediately. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a reply. You think too much, Ricky. He is friend from work. I typed back, my fingers trembling with rage and heartbreak. You're destroying me, Belle. Just tell me the truth. Do you care about me at all? Was any of it real? No reply. I waited for hours. Nothing. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sent another message. Please. I just need to know. Still nothing. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen, feeling everything I'd built in my mind collapse. I wasn't her hero. I was her ATM. I wasn't her love. I was her safety net. And now that I had nothing left to give, I was nothing. I couldn't eat for days. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight rapidly. My clothes hung off me. My face looked gaunt in the mirror. My daughter called, concerned. Dad, you sound awful. What's going on? I couldn't tell her. How could I explain that I'd fallen in love with a Thai ladyboy who'd taken me for everything I had? She'd never understand. Nobody would. I'd be the punchline of a joke. The stupid old man who thought he could buy love. I'm fine, Sarah, I said, just adjusting to the heat. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. You should come home, Dad. This doesn't sound healthy. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed closure. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried for the first time in years, great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the money, for the time, for the hope, for the man I used to be before I became this pathetic, broken thing. I knew I should leave. I knew I should pack my bags, go home, lick my wounds, and try to rebuild what was left of my life. But I couldn't. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to look her in the eye and hear the truth. So I sent her one more message. I'll give you 80,000 baht for your mother's treatment, but I need to see you. Just once. Please. I didn't even have 80,000 baht left. My savings account was nearly empty. I'd spent almost 15,000 pounds in 3 months. I had to borrow the 80,000 from Tom, promising I'd pay him back when I got home. He handed it to me with a sad shake of his head. You're a good man, Richard. Don't let her take that from you too. Belle replied within minutes. Okay. Meet me at Jomtien Beach tomorrow, 5 o'clock. I spent the next day in a daze. I walked to the beach in the afternoon and sat on the sand, holding the envelope of money, feeling hollow. The sun was starting to set, casting everything in gold and orange. Families played in the water. Couples walked hand in hand along the shore. Life was happening all around me, and I was just a ghost watching it pass. At 5:30, she appeared. She looked the same. Beautiful. Untouchable. She wore jeans and a white t-shirt, sunglasses covering her eyes. She sat down next to me, not too close, leaving space between us. Hi, Ricky. I handed her the envelope. She took it without looking inside. Thank you. We sat in silence for a long time. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to cry. I wanted to beg her to explain. But I just sat there, numb. Finally, I spoke. Did you ever care about me? She looked out at the water. I did. In my way. I felt tears building. What does that mean? She turned to me, taking off her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry. You are good man. You make me feel special. But we from different world, Ricky. You want love. I need survival. Maybe I confused the two. Maybe I let you believe what you want to believe. I wiped my eyes. So it was all a lie. She shook her head. Not all. Some parts were real. But yes, some parts were what you want to hear. She stood up, brushing sand off her jeans. I am not a bad person, Ricky. I just do what I need to do. Same as everyone. I looked up at her. What about the salon? She was quiet for a moment. There is no salon. Maybe one day, but not now. She put her sunglasses back on. You should go home, Ricky. Find someone who can love you the way you need. I cannot be that person. Then she walked away. I watched her silhouette fade under the neon lights of the beachfront bars. I didn't follow. I just sat there as the sky turned dark and the stars came out. That was the last time I saw her. I left Pattaya a week later. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. Every corner reminded me of her. The kitchen where we cooked together. The bed where we slept. The balcony where we sat watching the sunset. It was all poison now. I packed my things and took a bus north to Chiang Mai. I'd heard it was quieter there, more peaceful, a place where people went to think. I needed to think. I needed to figure out who I was now that everything I'd believed had been shattered. I rented a small studio apartment on the outskirts of the old city. It was basic, just a bed, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was mine. No memories, no ghosts. I spent the first few weeks in a fog. I'd wake up not knowing where I was. I'd reach for my phone expecting messages from Belle, then remember. I'd make coffee and sit on the small balcony, watching monks walk past with their alms bowls, wondering how they found peace. One morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I'd lost nearly 2 stone. My face was gaunt, eyes sunken, skin gray. I looked like a man who'd given up. Maybe I had. I stood there for a long time, just staring, trying to remember who I used to be. Before Belle, before Pattaya, before I became this pathetic thing. I couldn't remember. That person felt like a stranger. I started taking walks around the old city, past temples with golden spires, through markets selling vegetables and flowers, along the moat that encircled the ancient walls. I didn't talk to anyone. I just walked, trying to outrun the thoughts that chased me. You were so stupid. You deserved this. You'll never be anything but alone. The voice in my head was relentless. Sometimes I agreed with it. Sometimes I just wanted it to stop. Then one day, I saw a poster outside a cafe. Support group for expatriates. Tuesdays at 6. I stood there reading it, debating. The last thing I wanted was to sit in a room full of strangers and admit what had happened, but something made me write down the address. The following Tuesday, I almost didn't go. I stood outside the cafe at 5:50, my heart pounding, ready to turn around, but I forced myself to walk in. There were 6 other men sitting in a circle. They all looked up when I entered. A woman, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile, gestured to an empty chair. Come in. I'm Annie. You're welcome here. I sat down, my hands shaking. I'm Richard, I said quietly. Hi, Richard, they all said in unison. It felt like AA. Maybe it was, in a way, an addiction to hope, to love, to the fantasy that someone could save us. Annie led the meeting. Each person shared their story. Klaus, a German man in his 60s, had lost his entire pension to a woman in Phuket. She'd convinced him to invest in a business that never existed. Jack, an American in his 50s, had married a Thai woman who divorced him 3 months later and took half his assets. Michael, a Brit like me, had sent money to his girlfriend for 2 years before discovering she had 3 other boyfriends doing the same thing. The stories were different but the same. We'd all been lonely. We'd all wanted to believe. We'd all ignored the red flags until it was too late. When it was my turn, I told them about Belle, about the money, about the promises, about sitting on Jomtien Beach watching her walk away. My voice cracked, my hands shook, but I got through it. When I finished, nobody laughed, nobody judged. Klaus nodded. I know that pain, my friend. Jack said. You're not alone. It didn't fix anything, but it helped. Just knowing I wasn't the only fool in the world. After the meeting, Annie pulled me aside. How are you doing? Really? I shrugged. I don't know. Some days I'm okay. Most days I'm not. She nodded. That's normal. You're grieving. Not just the relationship, but the person you thought you were. That takes time. I looked at her. Will it always hurt like this? She smiled sadly. No. It'll change. It'll become something you can live with. But you have to let yourself feel it first. Don't run from it. I started going to the group every week. It became a lifeline. A place where I could be honest without fear of judgment. We all understood each other in a way nobody else could. We'd all made the same mistakes. We'd all loved people who didn't love us back. We'd all given too much and received too little. But we were still here. Still breathing. Still trying. One evening after group, Klaus invited me for coffee. We sat at a small cafe overlooking the river. You remind me of myself 2 years ago, he said. Broken. Ashamed. Ready to give up. I stirred my coffee. Did it get better? He nodded. It did. Slowly. I'm not the same person I was before, but I'm okay with who I am now. I wanted to believe him. How did you do it? He thought for a moment. I stopped blaming myself. I stopped thinking I was stupid or weak. I accepted that I'm human, that I wanted connection, that there's nothing wrong with that. What she did, that's on her. Not me. His words stayed with me. I started trying to forgive myself. To stop replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for where I went wrong. To accept that I'd been vulnerable and someone had taken advantage of that. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my shame to carry. Slowly, bit by bit, the weight started to lift. I also started writing. Not for publication, just for myself. I bought a journal from a market and filled it with everything I felt. Anger, sadness, regret, hope. I wrote about Belle, about our time together, about the moments I thought were real. I wrote about the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation. And slowly, as the words poured out, I started to feel lighter. The pain didn't disappear, but it became something I could manage, something I could live with. I started volunteering at a local school, teaching English to children. It was Annie's suggestion. You need purpose, she'd said. Something that reminds you you're more than what happened to you. The school was small, just a few classrooms in a modest building on the edge of the city. The kids were between 8 and 12, eager and chaotic and full of life. They didn't care about my past. They didn't know about Belle or the money or the shame. They just knew me as Teacher Richard, the funny British man who couldn't pronounce Thai words correctly. Teaching them was healing. Their laughter, their curiosity, their innocence reminded me that the world wasn't all cynicism and exploitation. There was still goodness, still joy, still hope. One little girl named Fern took a particular liking to me. She'd always sit in the front row, eager to answer questions, proud when she got something right. One day after class, she handed me a drawing. It was a stick figure man standing on a beach, the sun rising behind him. This is you, teacher, happy. I looked at that drawing and felt something shift inside me. Maybe I wasn't happy yet, but I was getting there. I was healing. Months passed. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. It became a dull ache instead of a sharp knife. I stopped checking Belle's Facebook. I stopped wondering if she ever thought about me. I stopped caring about the money. It was gone. There was no getting it back. And in a strange way, that acceptance was freeing. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change how I lived with it. I started exploring Chiang Mai more. I visited temples, not as a tourist, but as someone seeking peace. I'd sit in the quiet halls, watching monks chant, feeling the weight of centuries of wisdom around me. I didn't understand Buddhism, but I appreciated its message. Everything is impermanent. Suffering is part of life. Attachment leads to pain. Maybe if I'd known that before, I wouldn't have clung so tightly to Belle. Maybe I would have let her go sooner. One Sunday, I was walking through the weekend market. The air was filled with the smell of grilled meat and sweet mango. Lanterns hung overhead, casting everything in a warm glow. I stopped at a stall selling handmade journals. The woman running it smiled at me. "You want to buy?" I picked one up, feeling the leather cover, the rough texture of the paper inside. "Yeah," I said. "I'll take it." As I paid, she said, "You write your story?" I nodded. "Something like that." She handed me the journal. "Good. Everyone has story, important to remember, important to learn." I walked back to my apartment, the journal tucked under my arm. I sat on my balcony, looking out at the mountains in the distance, now familiar and comforting. I thought about Richard from a year ago, the man who'd arrived in Pattaya looking for an escape, the man who'd met Belle and thought he'd found salvation. That man was gone. In his place was someone quieter, sadder, but wiser. I opened the journal and wrote on the first page, "I came to Thailand looking for love. I found loss, but in that loss I found myself." I still think about Belle sometimes, not with anger, but with a strange kind of pity. I saw a photo of her on someone's Facebook page a few months ago. She looked the same, maybe a little older, a little more tired, but still beautiful, still performing, still surviving. She was standing outside the Blue Lagoon with 2 other ladyboys, all of them dressed up, smiling for the camera. In the comments, men were tagging each other, making jokes, talking about their next trip to Pattaya. She'd already found new targets, new lonely men looking for connection. I felt sorry for them. But I also understood. We all just want to be loved. We all just want to matter. I don't hate her. I can't. She was doing what she thought she had to do, surviving in a world that didn't give her many options, and I was doing what I thought would make me whole, trying to buy love because I didn't think I could earn it any other way. We were both wrong. We both hurt each other. But hating her won't change that. It'll only keep me trapped in the past. Now I walk the same beach where we used to watch the sunrise. But I walk it alone. I've learned to be okay with that. Loneliness isn't the enemy I thought it was. It's just a state of being. And being alone doesn't mean being empty. I fill my days with small things. Conversations with shopkeepers who now recognize me. Meals cooked slowly, savored. Books read on lazy afternoons. I write letters to my daughter, trying to rebuild what I let crumble. She's started writing back. It's not much, but it's something. It's a start. Last month, she asked if she could visit. "I want to see where you're living, Dad. Make sure you're okay." I said yes. She's coming in December. I'm nervous, but also hopeful. Maybe we can fix what's broken. I've also learned that love, real love, isn't something you can buy. It's not something you can force or manipulate or beg for. It's found in moments of genuine connection, in shared silence, in the willingness to be vulnerable without expecting anything in return. I didn't have that with Belle. I had a transaction dressed up as romance, a fantasy I paid for, and that's on both of us. There are nights when the pain comes back, when I lie in bed and remember the way she used to say my name. Ricky, soft, almost tender. Was any of it real? I'll never know. On those nights, I let myself feel it. I don't push it away or distract myself. I sit with it, acknowledge it, and then I let it go. Because holding on to it won't change what happened. It'll only keep me prisoner. I've met other men like me through the support group. Some of them are still angry, still bitter, still convinced they were victims of evil women. But I don't see it that way anymore. We weren't just victims. We were participants. We made choices. Bad choices, maybe, but choices nonetheless. We chose to ignore red flags. We chose to believe what we wanted to believe. We chose to give money we couldn't afford to lose. And owning that, taking responsibility for my part in it, has been the hardest and most liberating thing I've ever done. I don't regret coming to Thailand. I regret the pain, the loss, the humiliation. But I don't regret the journey, because it taught me something I desperately needed to learn. That I can't run from myself. That no amount of distance, no exotic location, no beautiful woman can fill the void that only I can fill. I came to Pattaya looking for someone to save me. I left realizing the only person who could do that was me. Annie told me once, during one of our sessions, "Healing isn't linear, Richard. You'll have good days and bad days. Days where you feel strong and days where you feel like you're back at square one. But as long as you keep moving forward, as long as you keep choosing to live, you're doing okay. I think about that a lot. Some days I feel strong, confident, at peace. I wake up grateful for the sunrise, for my health, for the simple fact that I'm still here. Other days, I feel like that broken man sitting on Jomtien Beach, watching the woman he loved walk away into the neon lights. But both of those men are me, and I'm learning to accept them both. I've started teaching more classes at the school. The principal, a kind Thai woman named Kun Nok, asked if I'd be interested in teaching 5 days a week instead of 3. I said yes. The kids call me Teacher Ricky now. It makes me smile every time. They don't know about Belle, about the money, about the shame. They just know me as the kind man who teaches them English, who brings them candy on Fridays, who tells bad jokes that make them groan. To them, I'm not a fool. I'm not a cautionary tale. I'm just Teacher Ricky. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's who I am now. Last week, Fern stayed after class. She'd drawn me another picture. This time it was more detailed. A man standing on a beach, yes, but now there were children around him, holding his hands. This is you, teacher. With us. Happy. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, Fern. This is beautiful. She smiled shyly. You are good, teacher. We love you. Those 3 words, so simple, so innocent, hit me harder than anything Belle had ever said, because they were real. There was no agenda, no transaction, just pure, honest affection. I hugged her. I love you too, all of you. And I meant it. I still live in Chiang Mai. I don't plan on going back to England anytime soon, not because I'm running away, but because I've found something here. Not love, not romance, but a kind of peace. A rhythm to my days that feels right. I wake up early, make coffee, sit on my balcony and watch the city come to life. I teach, I write, I walk. I talk to strangers and listen to their stories. I've learned that everyone is fighting a battle, carrying a burden. The shopkeeper whose son is sick, the tuk-tuk driver whose wife left him, the monk who's struggling with doubt. And in that shared struggle, there's a kind of connection that doesn't require money or lies or pretense. I've also learned to be kinder to myself, to stop replaying the mistakes over and over, to stop punishing myself for being human. I was lonely. I wanted to be loved. I made poor choices, but I'm not a bad person. I'm not weak or stupid or pathetic. I'm just a person, flawed, broken, but still here, still trying. And that counts for something. That counts for everything. They say curiosity killed the cat. For me, it killed my pride. But maybe that's what I needed. To stop pretending I was above loneliness. To stop acting like I didn't need connection. To admit that I was vulnerable, that I was hurting, that I was desperate for someone to see me. Belle saw that, and she used it. But in a strange way, she also gave me something. She gave me a mirror. A painful, ugly mirror that showed me who I'd become. A man so desperate for love that he'd pay for the illusion of it. And in seeing that, in really seeing it, I was able to start changing. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll meet someone someday. Someone real, someone honest, someone who wants me for who I am and not what I can give. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll spend the rest of my life alone, teaching English to kids and writing in journals and walking through markets. And you know what? That's okay. That's more than okay. Because I've learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. And even if it were, I'd rather be lonely and whole than connected and broken. Belle didn't destroy me. I let her. I gave her the power because I didn't have the strength to hold it myself. But I'm taking that power back. Every day. A little more. Every morning I wake up and choose to forgive myself. Every night I go to bed a little lighter than the day before. It's slow. It's hard. But it's happening. I'm healing. Not healed, but healing. And that's enough. I walked past the Blue Lagoon a few months ago. I was in Pattaya for a visa run. Something I have to do every 90 days. I didn't plan on going there. In fact, I'd planned to avoid walking street entirely. but my feet carried me there, as if drawn by some masochistic need to face the past. The bar was still open, still loud, still full of men looking for something they couldn't name. Girls still stood outside calling to tourists. "Hello, sexy man, come inside." I stood outside for a moment, half expecting to see Belle. She wasn't there, and I realized I was relieved. I didn't want to see her. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed. That book was finished. As I walked away, a young ladyboy called out to me, "Hello, mister. You want to sit?" She was pretty, younger than Belle, with a hopeful smile. I looked at her and saw not a person but a trap. Not because she was evil or malicious, but because I knew what would happen if I sat down. I'd see in her what I wanted to see. I'd hear what I wanted to hear. And in 6 months, I'd be back where I started. Broken, empty, alone. I smiled politely and shook my head. "No, thank you." She shrugged and turned to the next man walking past. I kept walking. And as I did, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Freedom from the need to be wanted. Freedom from the desperation that had driven me into Belle's arms. Freedom to just be Richard, flawed, broken, but finally, slowly, beautifully free. Now, when people ask me why I'm in Thailand, I don't tell them the full story. I just say I needed a change. And in a way, that's true. I came here looking for a change. I just didn't know it would be this painful, this devastating, this transformative. I thought I'd find love. Instead, I found loss. But in that loss, I found something more important. I found myself. Not the man I wanted to be, not the man I pretended to be, but the man I actually am. Scared, lonely, hopeful, damaged, but still here, still fighting, still human. Belle is still out there, still performing, still surviving, still doing what she has to do. I saw another photo recently, posted by a friend from the support group. She was with a new man, older than me, sitting in a restaurant. They were smiling. She had her hand on his arm. He looked happy, hopeful, in love. I felt a pang of sadness. Not for me, but for him. Because I know how this story ends. But I also know you can't save people from their own mistakes. They have to make them. They have to learn. Just like I did. I don't wish Belle ill. I don't wish her anything. She's a stranger to me now. A memory that's slowly fading, like a photograph left in the sun. And that's how it should be. Because holding on to her, onto the anger, onto the pain, that would only keep me trapped. And I've been trapped long enough. I've spent enough time in that prison. It's time to be free. I think about the men in my support group every week. Klaus is doing better. He started dating a German woman who lives in Chiang Mai. She's real. She has her own money, her own life. They're taking it slow. Jack went back to America but still emails sometimes. He's in therapy, working through his issues. Michael is still angry, still bitter, still convinced that all Thai women are scammers. I feel sorry for him because he's letting his experience poison the rest of his life. He's become the thing he hated. Hard, closed, cynical. I don't want to be that. I refuse to be that. So here I am, 64 years old, living in a small apartment in Chiang Mai, teaching English to children who call me Teacher Ricky, writing in journals, walking through markets, sitting in temples, slowly, painfully, beautifully rebuilding myself from the ruins of who I used to be. It's not the life I imagined, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. I'm not happy every day, but I'm not broken anymore. I'm healing. I'm growing. I'm learning. And that's a start. That's more than a start. That's life. I've learned that love isn't something you find. It's something you build. Slowly, carefully, with trust and honesty and time. I didn't have that with Belle. What we had was an illusion. A beautiful, painful, expensive illusion, but it was never real. And accepting that has been the hardest part, because I wanted it to be real. I needed it to be real. But wanting and needing don't make something true. They just make you vulnerable. The last time I spoke to my daughter, she told me she was proud of me. You sound different, Dad. Stronger. I didn't feel strong, but maybe that's what strength is. Not feeling strong, but choosing to keep going anyway. I'm trying, love, I told her. That's all I can do. She's coming to visit next month. We're going to spend Christmas together. It'll be the first time in years. I'm nervous, excited, hopeful. Maybe we can rebuild what was broken. Maybe we can create something new. Maybe family doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe it just has to be real. I don't blame Belle anymore. I don't blame Thailand. I don't even blame myself. Not really. We were two people, desperate for different things, who collided and combusted. She wanted security, survival, a way out. I wanted love, connection, a reason to exist. Neither of us got what we were looking for, but we both got something. She got money, I got wisdom. Maybe that's fair, maybe it's not, but it is what it is, and I've made peace with that. Real, genuine peace. Curiosity brought me to Pattaya. Loneliness kept me there. Desperation bound me to Belle. And catastrophe finally set me free. Not free from the pain, but free from the illusion. Free from the lie I was telling myself. That someone else could save me. That love could be bought. That connection could be forced. I know better now. And that knowledge, as painful as it was to gain, is the most valuable thing I own. More valuable than the money I lost. More valuable than the time I wasted. Because it's real. It's mine. And nobody can take it from me. So, when people ask me about Thailand, about my time in Pattaya, I just smile and say it was an adventure. And it was. Just not the kind I expected. Not the kind anyone expects. But the kind that changes you. That breaks you down and forces you to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, you find out who you really are. Not who you want to be. Not who you pretend to be. But who you actually are, when all the illusions are stripped away. And for me, that person is someone I'm finally starting to accept. Someone I might even, one day, learn to love. That's my story. From curiosity to catastrophe. From hope to heartbreak. From loss to, maybe, just maybe, redemption. It's not a happy ending, but it's an honest one. And after everything I've been through, honesty is all I have left. Honesty and the quiet knowledge that I survived. That I'm still here. Still breathing. Still trying. Still human. And some days, that's enough. Some days, that's everything.